From the John DeVita Broadcast Center, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another broadcast of Paranormal Radio with Bob Tricek on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network and Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich. So sit back and enjoy Paranormal Radio. And now, here he is, the king of Paranormal Radio, Mr. Bob Tricek.
All right, thank you very much, John. Thank you very much. King of Paranormal Radio. I'm going to talk a little bit about that King of Paranormal Radio thing there, too. A pleasure being back here doing the shows. Tonight, actually, is going to be a solo show. It's going to be me, something I haven't done in a while. I'm going to do the show myself here, and I'm going to talk a little bit of what I would normally have talked about for the February show. Normally, I like to do, like, for February, like Abraham Lincoln, Lincoln's Ghost, and the White House Ghost, that kind of thing like that for President's Day. So tonight I'm going to do that. I didn't bring any notes with me because we actually had something else planned for tonight, but I'll do it from memory. I'll do that. I pretty much got that down pat, so we'll talk a little bit about that. What we actually had scheduled for tonight was Mr. Jason Sherman, who was on our show in January. He was on with Tony Sabelski and that team, and he wanted to come back on again, and he was very enthusiastic about it. And then tonight he was a no-show. So I don't know what happened, if there was who knows? Any one of 1,000 things could happen. I normally been contacting Jason like with Facebook through messages that way. Today I wasn't near the computer all day because I had a family funeral to attend, so I was kind of busy with that all day and didn't look at that. So maybe he sent me a message that he was unable to come tonight or whatever. I don't know. Or, possibly, who knows? It could be any one of 1,000 things. Something went wrong with the car, an accident, some family matter, some emergency, something like this. I hope it's none of that. I just hope maybe he just forgot or whatever. I hope nothing bad happened, but we'll find out, and we'll let you all know next time we do the show. The reason we did not do a show in February is because something got screwed up with that show. The dates got messed up with that. We were actually supposed to be doing like a live broadcast, and then that got canceled because we had such bad weather. We had all that rain and bad weather in it, and they had a couple of things planned for that, and then John was unable to do, too. He, with his scheduling, was unable to do that. So that's how that all went. So now we're getting back on track here again. I do have a person lined up for March 17th for the next show. I figured for this month we'll do 2 shows, since we didn't do a February show, so I figured we'll do one today, which we taped the show on March 5th, and then we'll tape the second one on March 17th, which will be St. Patrick's Day. We'll tape on that day for that one, and I've got somebody lined up for that. So we'll see if we have better luck next time. In the meantime, Jason, I just hope everything is well and all that, and contact me, let me know what was going on there. I hope nothing bad happened. Just a couple of announcements of things that I've got going on here. Like I said, March 17th, that will be the next taping of Paranormal Radio. Linda will be coming on. No, we're not doing March 17th. It's March 19th. March 19th. There it is. See, I messed up. I wrote down the 17th, and it's the 19th. So March 19th, not St. Patrick's Day. St. Patrick's Day is Saturday, isn't it? Yeah, that's it. So no, we're not doing it. We're not taping a show on Saturday. So it'll be March 19th. I did write 19th. I just can't read my own writing. I did it. I'm just all jazzed up here about things not working out for tonight, so now I got to get back on track there. So March 19th will be our next show. And the young lady that's coming on, she's really got some good stories to tell, and I just want to have her. Normally we get like a bunch of folks on Paranormal Radio, but that show, I just want to do a solo with her, just a one-on-one interview. She's got some great stories to tell, a lot of UFO encounters with aliens, that type of stuff like that, so it should be an interesting show for that. April 2nd, we've got that lined up. We'll be doing a taping at a location. The Irish Legends, which is over in Willow Springs, right directly across the street from what is left of the old Willowbrook Ballroom. What's left of that? Oh, John just gave me a look about that. He feels bad about that. Yeah, because that was his hangout. He liked the Willowbrook. So we'll be doing a taping there from that. And then the Graveside Paranormal. They were on a couple of shows, too. That would be Mr. Neil Gibbons, Mr. Steve Lineweber, and Tommy Lineweber, the Graveside Paranormal team. They will be there. They're going to be doing an investigation down in the basement there and all that. We will be setting up the radio up in the attic. Well, it's on the 3rd floor up there. We'll be setting up there and doing some interviews and doing some talking there and having kind of a fun time with that. Maybe doing some games and that. That will be starting at 6 o'clock, April 2nd. That is a Monday night, John? You got your calendar there? That's a Monday night. Okay, I did remember that one right. So that'll be a Monday night. So we'll be doing that April 2nd. And that will be our show from that. If you want, you can come out and join us. It's a free event. They're not charging anything for that. There's no cover charge there at the bar or anything. So stop by, have a couple of drinks and that. We'll see how it goes, and maybe we'll do a couple of games, like maybe some paranormal trivia type stuff like that, and we'll see if the bar will cooperate with us. Maybe we'll get some prizes from them, like maybe some drinks or some free snacks or something like that. We'll see how that all works out with that. So it should be a kind of a fun time with that. Looking forward to doing that. With that, too, also, too, if you look on Facebook and you see all the posters and Neil's Facebook page and that, he put up posters that he made up about that with the Paranormal Radio, and they put on there the King of Paranormal Radio, Bob Tracek, me. So the King of Paranormal is kind of like a joke that's kind of just starting to stick there in that. Anyway, they spelled the King's name wrong on the poster, so I let them know about that. So we're just having a little bit of fun with that. So that'll be April 2nd. Okay, May 19th. I have a tour. I got broadcast date. That is not a broadcast date. May 19th, I'm actually doing a tour. That will be the Rose Hill Cemetery tour, and that will be with the Elsa Park District. So if you have never been out to Old Rose Hill Cemetery, give the park a call at 708-389-1003. Get yourself a seat on that. We'll take you down there. We have a good time. We'll give you a tour of the cemetery, the mausoleum, some of the beautiful architecture they got out there. And then we all stop across the street. We have lunch at the Fireside Pub. And then give you a little time down on Clark Street down there downtown to do a little shopping and look around at some of the shops down there and that. So give them a ring for that. And then also, too, coming up in May, the same week I've got the Rose Hill tour. Absolutely nothing to do with paranormal. So you say, why say this? It's going to be a library talk, and that's going to be the Orland Park Library over in Orland Park there on Ravinia Avenue. And I'll be doing a whole show there on game shows. A little bit of the history of game shows, some of the more better game shows we've had over the years, some of the game show scandals, that kind of thing like that. And then we'll be doing some game shows there, too. We're playing a little bit of You Bet Your Life, which I've done here from time to time on the air. And also, too, some Let's Make a Deal. So we'll have some prizes and some stuff here that you can win, too. Or you might get zonked. You know, Let's Make a Deal used to work. You could get a zonk, too. So it should be fun. Just some things we got coming up there. Okay. Tonight's show. Normally, like I said, when I do the show in February, I usually like to touch a little bit on the White House presidency, Lincoln's ghost, that kind of stuff like that. We did not do a show, and since we have no guests showing up for tonight's show, this would be a great time to do it. So I'll talk just a bit about some of the White House and some of the goings-on there. The White House, as we all know, is the president's home. Not officially called the White House up until President Theodore Roosevelt, our 26th president, right around 1902, 1903 or so like that, officially started putting on the White House stationery, the White House. Up until then, it had been called the President's Mansion, the Executive Mansion, and then kind of nicknamed the White House, but then officially it became the White House. A lot of people say that was nicknamed that way because of the painting from the outside of the house, which is probably true because it was just a big white house. In actuality, it is not white. It was built out of like a porous, very porous type of sandstone. And they found out that the sandstone that they used, like a lime, sort of a brownish, grayish kind of color, they found out that it was very, very porous, so you could get a lot of moisture. Like say you had a day where you got some rain, like sort of like the weather we're having this evening. We're getting some snowy and some rainy weather tonight. You could have a day where you get some rain or some snow in that, and what happened is the moisture could sink into the stone on the building, and then it could freeze, and it could actually crack it. So then what they started doing was whitewashing it and painting it to seal the stone. So it kind of got its white look that way. Every year or so, it would get a coating of paint, of whitewashing and that, and painting went over the years and that. And then eventually what happened was the paint built up so thick that a lot of the fancy scroll work and stuff that they had the artisans carve onto the stone on it, you couldn't even tell anymore. But then they cleaned it all off and went back down to the bare stone and that, and just gave it its one coat of paint. So just a little bit of history on the house. It was actually laid out and planned by our first president, George Washington. Picked the site out, put the cornerstone down, laid that. He never lived there. He's the only one of all the presidents we've had that never lived in the White House, for the simple reason it wasn't completed until 1800. And he died in 1799. So he died actually in retirement, but during his presidency, the house was being built. It took about 8 years to complete the house. First occupants were John and Abigail Adams, and they didn't live there all that long. When they moved in, the house was still, even though they moved in, it was still pretty largely incomplete. A lot of the rooms still were not finished. A lot of the plaster was wet on the walls. They had to keep fires going in the fireplaces around the clock to dry them out. They did not really like it too much. About 6 rooms were actually habitable for them to live in, and they didn't stay there all that long. They stayed there for a few months, and they actually got lost on the way going down to find the White House because there was nothing there. You remember, this was the new city that was being built, and the White House was the first public building built there, or first building built there at all, so they got lost actually finding it. But then they did find it and stayed there not too long. And in actuality, Abigail Adams is one of the first ghosts that we have in the White House. She's one of the first, earliest known sightings of a ghost that we have there. What happened with that was, like I say, it was largely an unfinished house, and the East Room would be the biggest room there, and it was unfinished. Just a big, empty, open auditorium, still not really completely done. And Abigail Adams decided to string her lines, wash lines in there, and hang up wash in the East Room to dry, because there were no lines even for that outside, no clotheslines to hang clothes up. So she figured that would be a good place to do that. So her ghost has been known to be seen in the East Room from time to time, walking through with her arms outstretched. They say almost as if she's holding a basket or holding a bundle of clothes, walking through the East Room. She actually passes through one of the walls and then enters the room and then just kind of just dematerializes. The first known recorded sighting that I know of this, I don't know if there have been any earlier ones, but the first one that I know of was during the William Howard Taft administration, and that was about 1909. That was the first time her ghost was known to be seen. So, okay, we have nothing going on there, just some ghostly activity with Abigail Adams, a friendly little ghost that likes to visit there. They attribute that to her. And then really nothing for a few years here until we get to Andrew Jackson, our 7th president. Andrew Jackson's ghost likes to show up in the Rose bedroom of the White House. The Rose room is like a room that's kind of reserved for, higher-ranking women guests, because it's a very pretty room. It's not the Queen. It is actually the Queen's room, I think they call it. The Lincoln bedroom is for male guests. The Queen's bedroom, or the Rose room, for high-ranking female guests, women guests, like to stay there. And that room, when Andrew Jackson lived there, was actually his bedroom. And his voice has been known to be heard from that room. His voice, an icy cold touch, sometimes people get from that. Mary Todd Lincoln recorded, it's been documented that Mary Todd Lincoln heard his swearing and carrying on in there, and she didn't like it, and she said, they have to do something about that. She didn't like the language he was using in that. So that's the first time I know of anybody. Mary Todd Lincoln was the first person that claimed to have felt the presence of Andrew Jackson in there. A more famous story would be during the Roosevelt years. A maid, Lillian Rogers Parks, had worked there in the White House for many, many years and was doing some work on one of the bedrooms because she was a seamstress. And she was sewing on the drapes and the bedspread in the bedroom. And she heard this voice, this loud, cackling laugh, horrible laugh that she heard. And she said she felt something touch her shoulder. And she said she did not want to turn around to see what it was that was touching her, so she just promptly picked up her sewing basket, her sewing equipment, everything, and left the Rose room and said, "Bring the bedspread down to my sewing room, and I'll finish it there." And she said she never again entered the Rose bedroom. She never again did that. Also, during the Roosevelt years, too, during the Second World War, Queen Wilhelmina of the Netherlands stayed in there. Of there again, a royalty, Queen Wilhelmina of the Netherlands would be a high-ranking guest. She stayed in the Rose room as an occupant, and one day she heard a knock on her door. Her maid was unavailable to answer the door, so she answered the door herself, whereupon she was encountered by the ghost of Abraham Lincoln, standing there in frock coat and top hat, and she just fainted dead away on seeing his sight. And next day she related that story to the Roosevelts, and Eleanor Roosevelt herself said, "Oh yes, I felt the presence of Lincoln's ghost many, many times in the White House and that," and she kind of swore to it. Over the years, many presidents, Lincoln's ghost presence seems to be very, very strongly felt in the White House at different places and during different times in that. So we'll talk a bit about that, a little more about that, but I'm going to kind of run the gamut here. One of the next ghosts after Andrew Jackson would be our 10th president, John Tyler. John Tyler kind of came to the presidency sort of accidentally. He was his predecessor was William Henry Harrison, and William Henry Harrison is famous for really not too much except having the shortest term in office. He got elected, gave a 3.5-hour inaugural address in the rain and in the cold and damp, and he caught pneumonia and lingered in the House for about a month and died. So he only served for 30 days. He died, and that was it. And William Henry Harrison's ghost actually has been known to be seen up in the attic. Up in the attic of the White House. The attic is a very vast storage room. A lot of furnishings and things that are White House property from previous administrations and things are stored up there. And any first family that comes in, they are given a tour of the house. And they do take them up in the attic, and they say if there's anything that you would like, they will take it down and have it redone for them, reupholstered or whatever, and they can use any of the historic furnishings they choose to. They can pick anything out of it. And many of our presidents, and many first ladies in particular, because first ladies are up there usually looking for the furniture, have been known to feel the presence and see the apparition of William Henry Harrison for whatever reason. We don't know why in the attic, of all places, him serving the shortest term. And then our next ghost would be John Tyler. That one has been seen. The person that recorded seeing that was Mary Todd Lincoln, and she recorded seeing his ghost in the Blue Room. And she says he was knelt down and leaning towards one of the divans, one of the sofas. He was knelt in front of that, like on one knee, proposing. And we do know that he proposed to his second wife, because he was married twice. We do know he proposed to his second wife in the Blue Room, so she said she definitely seen the ghost of John Tyler. There's only one little discrepancy with Mary Todd Lincoln's story about that. he wasn't dead yet. When she claimed to see his ghost, he wasn't dead. So I don't know if that's a possible thing to have happen. But she claimed she did not see his ghost, or she saw his ghost, but he was still alive. So I don't know how that worked. Okay, we're going to jump a bit now up into, that was John Tyler. Then we take a jump, he was our 10th president. We take a jump up now to Abraham Lincoln, our 16th president. Oh boy, that's when all hell kind of broke loose. Lincoln, of course, we know, had a very, very tumultuous presidency. The Civil War, the Emancipation Proclamation, a lot of death, a lot of destruction going on. You have the nation split in two, North and South. Just so many things. Just a really, really tough presidency. He had a really, really hard time with the presidency there. Elected in 1860, and also to a lot of personal problems in the White House too. He came there with, and then things happened there too. They lost their second son. The Lincolns had 4 sons. One son, Eddie, died on them in Springfield, and then Willie and Tad, the 2 younger boys, and then Robert, being the oldest, was away from the White House, and he really didn't live there all too much during the Lincoln years because he was away at school, and then later on into the military he joined. But the 2 younger boys, what happened with them was they were playing out in a snow, sort of a freak snowstorm in Washington, and came in and kind of took sick from that. The younger boy, Tad, or the older boy, Tad, he recovered from it. He recovered from the illness, but Willie did not. Willie just seemed to weaken and get worse, and that was it, and he eventually died. He perished. And, of course, Mary Todd was very, very distraught over this, and this opened up a whole can of worms for her with spiritualism and seances and mediums trying to contact her dead son's spirit and all this. And she became very, very grief-stricken, as well as the president. And Willie's ghost has been known to be seen in the White House. Over the years, many people, starting, I think, with the Grant administration, our 18th president, when the Grants were in there, they claimed to have contacted the ghost of Willie, seen him. He was asking about his brother and about his pony. He wanted to know about that. And then much later on, too, during the administration of Lyndon Baines Johnson, Johnson's daughter claimed to have been encountered by the ghost of Willie Lincoln. And over the years, many people claim to have seen the ghost of a small boy, dressed in a suit. Some people say he was like in a Civil War era suit, like a child dressed up in a Civil War soldier's, child's uniform, that type of thing. Other people said, no, it was like a plain suit. So, different descriptions on that. But they attribute that to be the ghost of Willie Lincoln seen there. And then, of course, we have the ghost of Willie's father, Abraham Lincoln. Of course, we don't need to detail you too much about that, what happened to him. Of course, the man was assassinated at Ford's Theater. And what is now the Lincoln bedroom, which holds the suite of furniture that was part of the furnishings that Mary Todd Lincoln purchased for the White House. Although Lincoln never slept in that bed, the bedroom that it's in now during Lincoln's administration was actually his cabinet room. And in that room, he signed a lot of important papers and a lot of things with the Civil War and also the Emancipation Proclamation. They do have a copy, a handwritten draft of the Gettysburg Address in that room. It's glass cased and everything, and that stays there in the Lincoln bedroom. And his ghostly presence has been seen and felt around that room quite a lot over the years. During the Second World War, a lot of things seem to be happening during the Second World War, and a lot of these ghosts seem to manifest during times of national crisis for folks. And during the Second World War, Winston Churchill, Prime Minister of Great Britain, was a very, very frequent guest of the White House, stayed there a lot during the Roosevelt years, and stayed in the Lincoln bedroom. One famous story of him encountering the ghost of Lincoln, he liked to walk around in his room without any clothes on after taking a shower or taking a bath or whatever and smoke a cigar and have a brandy. And one time he was doing just so. And he says he caught the ghost of Abraham Lincoln standing there looking at him. And he said to the ghost, to the president, he says, "Mr. President, you seem to have me at the disadvantage." He says upon that he saw a little smile come over the president's ghostly image, and he just dematerialized and faded away. And then after that, he never again wanted to stay in the Lincoln bedroom. There was a room across the hall. He kind of moved into there and kind of headquartered himself in that. Over the years, many Lincoln staff, doing different errands and doing different work in the room and around it, have been known to encounter the ghost of Abraham Lincoln. One of the secretaries there was in the room for whatever reason doing something and caught the ghost of the president sitting on the bed and actually pulling on his boots, whereupon he noticed her, she noticed him, and then the ghostly image just kind of disappeared. The very first known sighting of Lincoln's ghost was, like I said, not really during Lincoln's ghost, during the Grant administration. That was Willie's ghost, but Willie Lincoln's ghost, his son's ghost, that was seen during that one. But in the 1920s, First Lady Grace Coolidge, the wife of Calvin Coolidge, in the Yellow Room, she claimed to have walked in one time, and there she saw, looking out the windows with his hands clasped behind his back, was towards the Potomac River, was the ghost of Abraham Lincoln. whereupon he acknowledged her. When she came in, the ghost turned around, saw her, and then just kind of just dematerialized right in front of her. And that was the end of that. So that's the first time that we know of his ghost being seen. But then, like I say, Second World War, Winston Churchill, and then other staff members over the years seeing it. President Harry Truman acknowledged a lot of times he'd be working in his office late at night and would get a ghostly knock on the door. And, of course, would go to see who was there, and no one was there. And he said, yeah, that's the ghost of old Abe. President Roosevelt himself and Mrs. Eleanor Roosevelt also claimed to very, very strongly feel the presence of Abraham Lincoln's ghost. And over the years, many, many people have claimed to felt that presence. So we have a few ghostly images there going on with that. Oh, one very, very important one I also forgot to mention. Like I said, I'm doing this without my notes. Usually when I do this, I have my notes in front of me, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right down the line like that. So I'm kind of jumping around a bit here. I'm trying to do them chronologically. But one I did miss was the ghost of Dolly Madison. And that goes back a little bit. That was our fourth president, James Madison, his wife. Everyone knows that during the Madison's administration, the War of 1812, and the White House was burnt. White House was burnt, and just a very bad thunderstorm saved the house from completely being destroyed. So they had the outside walls on it, and of course it all had to be rebuilt again. And one of the things that Dolly did, Dolly was one of the first ladies that really loved living in the White House. She really did. She loved it a lot, and she loved doing things for the house and that. And one of the things she did was start the Rose Garden. She planted a rose garden there. And during the administration of Woodrow Wilson's first wife wanted the garden moved for whatever reason. All the years it had been there, and for whatever reason, she wanted the roses dug up, moved, and something else put there. And the workmen, of course, went out there with spades and shovels to do just that, whereupon they encountered the ghost of Dolly Madison, wearing a white gown, hair pulled up with a turban on it and everything, and she had some harsh words for them, and they said her ghost just seemed to be hovering, and the dress just kind of blowing, like a diaphanous sort of gown blowing in the wind, and whereupon they put the shovels down and left, and the rose garden stayed where it was and still is. So I kind of jumped around a little bit there. I didn't want to forget Dolly's ghost. Dolly Madison's ghost also has been known to be seen on the front porch of the Octagon House, which is the house that they occupied after the White House was burnt. They could no longer live there, and they lived in the Octagon House then as a temporary residence while the repairs were being done on the White House. And her ghost has been known to be seen on the porch of the Octagon House over there. So Dolly gets around a little bit too. Okay, we did Lincoln's ghost. Lincoln's ghostly presence is probably one of the more famous ones felt in the White House. We also have a ghost of a mysterious cat. There's a very mysterious black cat, which they attribute to bad luck, that likes to show up, and that ghost likes to show up in the basement and in the lower levels of the White House. And they say usually during times of crisis, when the nation is at war or some crisis is happening, they see this ghostly image of this cat that kind of just appears and disappears, and that's the end of that. We do have some ghosts of some of the domestics, too. There was a gentleman, Jerry the Feather Duster. Jerry used to work in the White House as a cleaner and a duster, especially during the Victorian era when you had a lot of break-a-back and knickknacks and things to dust. He did that. He was a houseman there for many, many years. And during the 1880s, when there were slow news days where the news didn't have too much to print about the president and too much news to print about the country, they would come and Jerry would give them ghost stories. He'd be telling them kind of the stories that I'm telling you now, this type of stuff about that, about different ghostly presences in the house and that, and Lincoln's ghost and all these different things. And this was in the 1880s that Jerry was doing this. And then eventually Jerry became a ghost himself. People have been known to see this very stately, African-American man sort of dressed in clothing from another era, not quite something of this age, and they think it's some sort of a reenactor or something like that. And they say, oh, no, that's Mr., so-and-so. He always wanted to be a doorman, manning one of the doors, and that's what he does now. And his image has been seen and then sort of disappears. That kind of stuff like that. So we do have that. Dolly Johnson was a cook for many, many years in the White House, worked in the kitchens there, and her image has been seen in the kitchens of the White House. And there again, wearing a long dress, like a gray dress with an apron over the front of it and a hair in a white cap, domestic worker, and that image of her has been seen, and the apparition has been seen in the kitchens. And there again, some people have seen that and say, gee, are they doing something here? Some sort of a documentary or historical drama? There's like a costumed person walking around there. Nope, it's not a costumed person. That's how she actually looks. She's not wearing a costume, and that was the ghost of Dolly Johnson that shows up there. Anne Surratt. Anne Surratt was the daughter of Mary Surratt. Mary Surratt was executed along with, I believe it was 7 others, for the assassination of the Lincoln conspirators, for the conspiracy in the Lincoln assassination. And Anne Surratt, her daughter, shows up on the 7th of July on the north portico of the White House. Her ghost shows up, and it's pounding on the doors and crying. And a loud wailing can sometimes be heard in a crying. She's actually pleading with the new president, President Johnson, for a pardon for her mother. So her mother would be spared the gallows, but it didn't work. Her mother was hanged. Actually, I think she was the first woman executed in this country. I think Mary Surratt was, for her part in the Lincoln conspiracy. And in actuality, I don't think she took all that much part in it, other than the fact that she owned a boarding house where a lot of the conspirators themselves did stay. So what she actually knew about the assassination or not, I don't really know. But nonetheless, she was executed along with everyone else. And her daughter's ghost has been seen there. And it's kind of nice that we actually have like a time where we know what to look for that one. Also, too, going back to the War of 1812, sometimes out on the lawn, there again on the North Portico, the ghost of a British soldier has been seen. Soldier wearing the white pants and red jacket uniform of a War of 1812 era soldier, torch in hand. They see him out there with a torch, and he's, makes the motion like he's flinging it towards the house. So there again, that could have been one of the soldiers maybe that was killed in the war, that was there looting and burning the White House at that time, and his image appears from time to time when the conditions are just right, and it's, kind of played back like a little movie. Every now and again, people see him. And there again, too, some people that have seen that apparition claim it, and say, well, Jesus, there's some sort of reenactment going on here. You've got, soldiers dressed up in costume out there. And then again, they attribute that to the ghost of this soldier, whoever he was, unnamed. We don't know exactly who that person was. So we do have some images in that house and some things that go on there. The Lincoln ghost, like I said, being one of the more famous. Other things, sounds, things you can't explain. Just about every first family, well, I shouldn't say every single one, but many, many of the first families have said, yeah, there are some strange things going on in that house, things that we just can't explain, voices that you hear, knocks on doors when no one's there, bells being rung, that sort of stuff that you just can't have no explanation for, different sounds. Usually, though, the president, the first family doesn't admit any of this until after they leave office. Once they're out of office, then they say that the only family that I know that did admit to there being strange goings on in the house while they were still in office and still in residence there were the Obamas. The Obamas actually admitted, and they said, yeah, there are some strange things going on. We just have no explanation for, and that was it. They admitted that. So there you have that. Talk just a little bit about Lincoln's ghost. Like I said, Lincoln's ghost is one of the more famous ones, and I kind of like to tie that in with February, since we have President's Day in February and Lincoln's birthday on February 12th. Lincoln, of course, as we all know, lived in Springfield. The only home he owned is in Springfield on the corner of 8th and Jackson. However, his ghost doesn't really haunt that house. There have been some ghostly things happening in that house that they have no explanation for. On the staircase, they can often hear what sounds like the rustling of women's skirts, someone walking up or down the staircase, and you could hear rustling of petticoats and skirts. They attribute that to being Mary Todd Lincoln. Sometimes there is an old-fashioned treadle sewing machine in there that will kind of run a little bit, and they hear it click, 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 click going on its own there, and they don't know what does that. And then also, too, in the front parlor, toys have been known to roll across the floor, and the rocker has been known to rock, and they have no explanation for that. They don't know why. They put things back in place where they're supposed to be, and they do find them, rolled out or moved around a little bit like that. Much of the furnishings in the house are original Lincoln pieces. They do try to put original pieces in each of the rooms. Of course, the Lincolns now, lived in that home, and then when he got elected to the presidency, they sold, some of their furniture. Some they stored, some they kept, a few things they took with them, that kind of thing like that, always with the intention of coming back to the house and then using some of this furniture again, or maybe, and then purchasing some new stuff. So their stuff over the years kind of scattered a little bit here and there, but then over the years through donations and things, original pieces that were in use by the family while their residency in that house have been back there. When you do tour the house, though, they won't tell you exactly which ones they are. They don't like to say that. They like to kind of keep that a secret for security purposes, and then just also too because of the paranormal. People say, oh well, if that is an original Lincoln rocker, is that the one that rocks without anybody seeing it? So just for things like that. So, like I say, his ghost, not so much in that house, but the presidents of the children and Mary Todd's ghost. It would stand to reason that Mary Todd would want to have something around there hanging around, because those were probably some of the happier years, outside of the fact that they lost their not their first son, their second son, Eddie, died while they lived in that house. But other than that, it was a good time for her. I think the 17 years they lived, they were very good years for her and a happy time. So it might be something that she would want to revisit from time to time in the next world, and just being a happy place for her. Sometimes, too, at the front door from the outside, people will walk by, and there are lighted images, from the inside, and they do see an image, like what appears to be a woman's image standing by the front door, and that also is attributed to the ghost of Mary Todd Lincoln. So her presence has kind of been known to be seen around that. Lincoln's tomb, over there in Oak Ridge Cemetery, not too far from that. From time to time, people have been known to see the tall image of the president walking the grounds around the tomb. So they say, do ghosts haunt cemeteries? Yes, they do. They haunt cemeteries a bit. So Lincoln's presence has been felt over there, and his image has been seen. Before his body was actually permanently interred in that tomb the way it is now, it was usually moved 17 different times from 1865, when he was originally assassinated and shot and prepared for burial in Springfield, until 1901. They had moved his body around so much for various reasons. One, there had been in the 1870s, there had been an attempt to steal his body and hold it for ransom. Other people have tried to capture the body over the years, and we are going to take a little break right now, and we'll come back and I'll finish the story of Lincoln with you. So come back with us, folks. Stick back. I like telling these stories.
You're listening to Paranormal Radio with Bob Trisek from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network on Monday, March the 12th, the year 2018. And this is Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich. And now back to Paranormal Radio and Bob Trisek.
Thank you, John. Back on again. I got a little bit of break there just to rest my voice for a second there, and I'll come back and finish the story of Lincoln. And I was over to the point of Lincoln's life. Well, actually, in Lincoln's death, I got to. Lincoln was a very, very, very psychic president. All his life, he seemed to have psychic things and strange things happen to him, even more so during his White House years. Of course, we all know the famous story of his dreams. He dreamt he was on a boat. The boat was going down a river. It was in the middle. He couldn't get it to, with oars to either side. It just seemed to be going down this river and leading to nowhere and going very fast with him on it. He interpreted that dream as like, him being in charge of the country and just kind of running the course this way. Different premonitions too. Also, he saw in a mirror, when you look in a mirror, he saw a double image of himself. He saw his own image and then like a ghostly image behind it. And a lot of people take that as a premonition of your death. And then, of course, the more famous story is the dream he had, where he was asleep, woken up from his sleep, heard a loud crying and wailing and weeping, and followed the sounds, which took him over to the East Room, and there was built a big catalog with a coffin on it, decorated, all in black drapery, and soldiers standing guard with mourners, and he went up to one of the soldiers and asked who was dead in the White House. Whereupon, in the dream now this is, the soldier promptly answered him, "The president, sir, he was killed by an assassin." So Lincoln kind of felt, maybe had a glimpse of his own demise, not all that many years later, just a few years later in 1865. Kind of premonitions of what was going to happen to him. His stepmother, Sarah Bush Lincoln, had said when he got elected to the president and left the White House, she said she knew she was never going to see him again. After he was shot, she said she knew they were going to kill him. She knew what was going to happen. She just was waiting to hear the word on it, but she kind of felt that. So Lincoln kind of went in there with that. Many, many things he had to deal with in the White House. He dealt with death almost on a daily basis, signing pardons for soldiers, deserters, and different criminals, war criminals, Confederate prisoners, the whole slavery issue with the Emancipation Proclamation, many things to deal with, as well as personal troubles. Mary Todd Lincoln, his wife, of course, we know her mind was a little unstable there, doing sporadic, weird things that Mary Todd was known to do. So he had to deal with that, and he called it a partial insanity, is what he actually called it. And then, of course, the grief dealing with that, losing his one son, his 11-year-old son, Willie, died on him in the White House. So a lot of things like that. So it's kind of understandable that his presence would be felt a lot in the White House. But then, like I say, over by the tomb, there was a tremendous amount of unrest about him. And I started talking a little bit about how they moved his body so much. Over the years, it was moved so much, like I say, just for the fact to try to conceal it. And originally, the body was on the floor that you walk in, like on the ground floor, and there was a sarcophagus there with a little memorial, and that's where the body was. But then they realized, oh, this isn't too secure because anybody could come in and just kind of, if they get enough of people, they could lift the lid off of that marble lid and get into the coffin, and that, which actually almost did happen, but that plot got foiled. So after that got foiled, they actually took his body out, hid it, put it down, made a more permanent tomb, put him in that. They thought it was going to be okay, and then they found out not to be so. A caretaker, a few months later after that, got word again. Someone called with sort of a strange message saying that the president's body was going to be kidnapped. So there again, they took it out, went down into the bottom of the tomb, hid it down in the labyrinth there, covered it up with some old wood and some different debris and things like that so it would be unrecognized. And they were just kind of sort of at a dilemma what to do with this. And then they tried, doing different things, building a more permanent thing. And then what happened too was the tomb was found to be settling, goofy. Work had to be done on that. So they had to take the body out, put it back into the receiving vault where it was stored originally before it was put into the tomb while the tomb was being built. While they did work on that, with the ending result was in 1900, they wound up just rebuilding the whole tomb. So by then, Lincoln's two sons had died, three sons actually had died, and they were buried in there. And I think Mary Todd then by then had been gone too by the time they rebuilt the tomb. So they had to move the whole family out, put them in a temporary vault, redo the tomb, and then put them all back in there. And finally, his surviving son, Robert, had just kind of had enough of so much of his father's body moving around from place to place and going here to there, and the casket being opened so much to make, identify that it was actually him and that. And he said, we just have to do something about this permanent. I want my family at rest and left alone, and that's it. So what they did is they built a steel cage, put the coffins inside a steel cage, filled the cage with about 10 tons of cement, lowered them into a vault underneath the chamber, underneath the ground floor of it, put them in there, poured cement in again over the top of that, sealed them up, and then sealed the floor, and that's it, and that's where his body's been ever since. But before that happened, in 1901, just before they did the final permanent burial on it, they did open his casket. His casket was opened 5 times over the years from 1865 to 1901 until the permanent burial, just to make certain that it was indeed him in there because he had been moved so much. So the final time they did that was 1901. Opened it up inside the tomb. It was in September, very warm was the description of it. There were 26 witnesses there, the youngest being a Thurtwood boy called Fleetwood Lindley. That was his name. His father actually took him out of school and said, come on, I want you to come with me. This is something you don't want to miss. This is a once-in-a-lifetime thing. They're going to open the casket of President Lincoln. You could see the president's body, and then it's going to be buried. And he was the youngest one, also the only child, to see the president's body. What they did is they cut open a section of the lead casket, looked inside, and they said, yes, indeed, it was Lincoln. You could very distinctly make out his features, very, very remarkably preserved from 1865 to 1901 when they opened it. At that time, they said his eyebrows sort of just fell off. The beard was still intact. His face had darkened quite a bit, but nonetheless was preserved. His suit that he wore was actually the black broadcloth suit that he wore for his second inauguration, made by Brooks Brothers, and the suit, they said, had a little bit of like mold spots on it. His folded hands had originally held a small American flag too, and they said the little flag was in tatters, and the gloves had disintegrated off his hands. But other than that, the body was in good condition. It was positively identified by 26 people, the youngest being 13-year-old Fleetwood Lindley. Then it was sealed up, put into the steel cage, covered with cement, buried permanently, and obla-di, obla-da, that's into that. That's where it's been ever since then. So that was it. I think in the 1930s, they also had to do a bit of work on it, too, on the tomb, some stuff like that. So, from time to time, they do things to it, but nothing ever a major rehaul again. Second time they rebuilt it, they made certain that they kind of built it as a permanent thing in that. And finally, the president's body has been at rest all these many years, and that was the end of that. Robert Lincoln himself died in 1922. Lived to see the dedication of the Lincoln Memorial in Washington to his father. Robert Lincoln sort of had a little bit of a presidential curse with him because he's kind of indirectly or directly involved with the deaths of 3 presidents by assassination. The first, of course, being his father, him not being in the theater when his father was shot, but nonetheless, right after the shooting, he's summoned over to the Peterson boarding house where his father was taken across the street from the theater, and there with his father, during his final moments when his father died. And then later on, during the administration of James Garfield. James Garfield, over the 4th of July in 1881 or 82 or so, I may be a little off on the date on this, was giving a speech at a train station in Washington Robert was asked to attend, and that's when a man came with a revolver and point blank fired into the president's back and into his arm, and Garfield lingered for a few months and then died. So that's another assassination. And then in 1901, at the Pan American Exposition, President William McKinley was giving a speech there at the exposition and making an appearance there. Robert was present, and again, an assassination, walked up with a revolver, small gun, folded in a handkerchief in his hand, and fired point blank at the president while standing in a receiving line to shake the president's hand. And Garfield lived for a short time after and died too. So after this, Robert Lincoln kind of made the statement he didn't want to appear in public with any presidents anymore. He says, I've kind of had bad luck with this. I really don't want to do this. But in 1922, for the dedication of his father's memorial, of course, he had to be there for the dedication of Lincoln Memorial. And he didn't really want to do it because he would be in the presence of the then sitting president, Warren G. Harding, and also another ex-president, William Howard Taft, who now was Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. But he did it, and William Howard Taft lived okay. He got through the ordeal all right. But 18 months into his term, Warren G. Harding died while on tour in San Francisco. He died taking an Alaska tour in San Francisco tour. He died there from a stroke, a cerebral hemorrhage, and passed away. So that was it. After that, Robert, until his death, never again appeared with another president, and that was the end of that. Robert also left no male heirs to carry on the Lincoln name. Lincoln, of course, as we know, had 4 sons. 3 of them died. One died as a 2-year-old, one died as an 11-year-old, and then one died as a 17-year-old, Tad. The only son to survive into old age was Robert, their firstborn. He lived, I think, the ripe old age of about 83 or so before he passed away. Robert had daughters, and he did have one son, and that same son was named Abraham Lincoln, but no one was allowed to call him Abraham Lincoln. He told him that was a name he would have to earn. Everyone called him Jack. He was nicknamed Jack. The poor boy died at 17 years of age, right about the same age that Robert's brother, Tad, had passed away. So there was something with the Lincolns there, something in the genes or something that just in the males, just the longevity wasn't there. So Robert having only daughters and the daughters marrying and taking their husbands' names, there are no Lincoln heirs to pass away. The last direct descendant of Abraham Lincoln was Robert Todd Beckwith, was the name he went by, Robert Todd Beckwith, Todd being Mary Todd's maiden name, surname, was the last direct descendant to Abraham Lincoln. He died in 1985. So now there are no people that claim descendancy from or to Abraham Lincoln. So that was the end of that. So that's the story that I have about Lincoln, a little bit about the White House ghosts there, and that's kind of what I've got for this week's show, for this month's show, for this, well, I should say for the March 5th show. Once again, my apologies there. Well, I shouldn't say really apologies. My concern over Jason Sherman. I hope that everything's well, and if there was some sort of an emergency there, it's nothing serious. We are scheduled to do the next show on March 17th, so I will let you know on that. I'll make mention of what actually happened to Jason there, and if all is well with Jason in it, of course, we can schedule him, and he can come back on another time if he wants to, and we'll go from there. Okay, I'm going to end. Also, too, please don't forget to listen to the other shows we've got here. Meet the Chicago Historians, the Dawn of Sports, our show, Paranormal Radio, Chicago Junction, the Armchair Experts. You've added a couple of new ones here. Dr. Wayne and Dan. That's a healthy talk show. Right, John? New one? Dr. Wayne. Keeping It Real. That one's gone, isn't it? Keeping It Real? That we don't have anymore. That one got canceled. They decided not to do it, but they did pick up the other show there. And also, too, don't forget to listen to the big band music and everything that John likes to play. The Windy City Network, www.windycityhometown.com. YouTube, and also to our affiliate station, Jack FM Norwich, 89.7 WRHS, where this broadcast will be heard tomorrow or Thursday? Next Monday. Oh, next Monday. Oh, that's a different date. So the broadcast will be heard a week from today. The following Monday, you can pick this broadcast up on 89.7 WRHS in Norwich with Jack FM. All right, folks, that's about all I have. Thank you so much for listening. It's just an absolute pleasure and joy for me to come here and do these shows. And thank you for listening, folks. Have a wonderful evening. Please stay safe. Bye-bye.
You have been listening to Paranormal Radio with Bob Trisek from the John DeVito Broadcast Center on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network and Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich. Paranormal Radio was directed by John DeVita, and our special thanks to the executive producer of Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network, Mr. John Shikanda, and the executive producer of radio station WRHS FM Norwich, Mr. Kevin Zeflik. This broadcast was pre-recorded on Monday, March the 5th, the year 2018. Until next time, friends, please be safe and thanks for listening. And this is Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM, Norwich, Illinois.